What is up, my friends? This is the Protect Your Neck podcast, and I'm your host, Dan Tom. Analysts' work you could find over at MMA Junkie as well as linemovement.com. But on this here program, the Protect Your Neck podcast, we break down high-level MMA. That's what we're going to do here today, tonight, whenever you're listening to this. Hopefully it's before the fight. Recording this just after weigh-ins, West Coast Pacific time, for fights that are going down in Abu Dhabi, the UAE, on Yas Island, or as the UFC refers to as Fight Island for hashtag UFC Fight Island 5, UFC on ESPN Plus 37, which we'll be breaking down from top to bottom, as per usual, like I do with all the breakdown editions. I don't blame you at all if you don't want to listen to me. You can always check the timestamps, skip directly to the breakdown, which hopefully won't come too long, as this is air quotes expedited edition. Or, as per usual, again, you can always just skip to the very end of the episode where I recap my picks and plays. Not many podcasts do that, recapping it at the end. So hopefully you guys appreciate that. I don't like to give attention to the negative, and to be honest, I probably should get way more between being online and being in the MMA industry. But I did have one comment on the podcast, somebody saying, Dan Tom's all over the place. I can't follow him. And I'm like, good thing no one's making you, man. But appreciate the positive energy because, of course, you go to those people's timeline and it's like nothing but negative. Thankfully, as per usual, I can say that honestly to you guys. I get positive comments from you guys every week, which is awesome. And a lot of times they are about the all over the placeness, whether it's my virtual internet bros there on the Sound of Violence, who gave me a nice too kind of a shout about it this week, and or Andrew or Jiu-Jitsu on Twitter at HipHopsin76. He's been listening since day one. He's a day oneer, man. Don't think I don't appreciate you, Andrew. Jiu-Jitsu. But yeah, man, I appreciate all you guys, especially on weeks like the past. Very, very challenging week, and did a podcast yesterday, and probably had the energy to do this podcast last night, but I was in a weird place. It was a non-MMA related podcast, which I've been meaning to do for a while, and we'll be telling you guys more about as it gets released. But yeah, I don't want to get too hung up. I want to push forward, and I just really wanted to give you guys, the listeners, with, of course, shouting a few in particular, but really all you guys. Man, do I appreciate you guys. So we're going to recap quickly UFC on Fight Island 4, UFC on ESPN 16. It technically was. Boy, I don't think I did. I think I made out all right. Some things saved my butt, but yeah, overall, picks-wise. Oy. I did 5-5-1 overall, 1-0, and parlays, I guess. 0-2 straight, and that was it. Fighting shrug. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I can't really make it the notes. Yeah, but Holly Holm defeated Adrian Aldana via unanimous decision. There wasn't much to say there. You know, it's funny. Not only was I wrong, obviously wrong, but like shamefully wrong in the sense that it had to do with the southpaw matchup, and that's usually my specialty. Now, granted, there wasn't any footage against Adrian Aldana against southpaws to know that she was going to do that. However, I shouldn't have overlooked that unknown so easily, because she did the silliest thing and just kept circling for the outside foot. And, you know, we've seen it in these weight classes or, you know, with some of the ladies before. That's not a knock. It's just because I brought up that example. What was it? The Randa Marcos, who, I mean, you know, and this is both males and females across the board. We've been seeing some crazy fight IQ, by the way, with that. But when Randa Marcos, not when she jumped into Mackenzie's guard, when she fought Ashley Yoder, Like, they were just both fighting for that outside foot to the point where they ran each other into the cage. Now, in this case, you had one fighter that was the wiser to that tactic and knew how to play into it, which was Holly Holm. She gets fighters to circle to the outside, whether they're trying to or not, by circling, to the power side of her opponent. The thing is, she's circling to the outside, making you chase. So it's not as quote-unquote dangerous to circle to that power side. In fact, she is circling you into her power side as she darts in these pre-run patterns. That's been kind of the same thing. The unfortunate part of that is not just being wrong or not, if you're a fan of Aldana, that sucks for her, sure. But it actually sucks most for Holly because she showed some really impressive stuff grappling-wise that she wasn't able to show. And, prove me wrong, I thought Aldana might be the more dangerous fighter down there. Maybe that might dissuade Holly and she might go for more of a control-based game. But she was getting after it, trying to pass, hit takedowns, scramble, turn corners, as best she could. And for someone this late in her career, you got to give her credit, Now, so but Aldana's poor performance to Holly Holm, or poor choices, making it a quote-unquote Holly Holm fight will overshadow the improvements, unfortunately, for her. Now, I'm sure there's some of you who I did see, and I believe me, I get it, saying, hey, credit to the doctor there. But yeah, man, training at altitude and strength and conditioning, say what you will, have always been a strength of that camp, man. So hats off to them. And hopefully Aldana can bounce back. I don't know if she'll be championship status. I didn't think that necessarily coming into the fight. I thought maybe it was a styles thing. Catching a fighter at the right time, but Holm is looking useful, huh? Speaking of looking youthful, despite not age but physique, Carlos Felipe defeated Yagin. Fucking Yagin. Check, I had a double burger. Yargin De Castro v. unanimous decision. Not much to say there. I mean, we had just the constant circles in the main event, and then we just had straight line pushing. In the co-main, props to anybody who caught that GIF reference, Animal House. Dan Tom pulling from 1978, super relevant. But yeah, it was the Stork leading the parade into the wall, and they just kept marching forward. That's what I felt like Yagin was. Jermaine Durandamy defeated Juliana Pena via submission guillotine. Wasn't trying to be mean, but man, Pena getting subbed by two Muay Thai fighters for being, the subspecialist or advertised to be, right? Grappling specialist at the very least. That was a rough go. She seemed to have a great attitude after it, wants to keep getting after it, so good on her. But, yeah, man, to no fault of Juliana Pena, not picking on her, but yes, I do believe people, say maybe, we overinflated. I agree, which is why I've properly picked against her in her last two defeats. That is Pena. And Durandamy as well just doesn't get enough credit, for and now we're going to see that again because the only pairing that makes sense is Holly Holm, Durandamy, and we get to hear all, the media again say, oh, and everybody in the fans go, oh, late shots after the bell, and you get to hear Dan Tom fucking pulling his hair out going, Todd fucking Anderson, it's the referee's job to get in between the fighters. It's worse because it's one of the most, referees, they're humans, man. It's the hardest job in the world. Human accountability, error. We should be more forgiving. I agree, yada, yada, so on and so forth. But what are they there for? Safety. And one of the biggest, most egregious things, right, is not protecting them from strikes, right? And the after effect of it, not just the strikes and damage taken, but the fighter throwing it gets the unfair blame of being a dirty fighter. When it was the ref's job. So we get to hear that. You get to hear Dan Tom rant about that. Yay. Kyler Phillips defeated Cameron Else via second round TKO. Almost would have got the sub prop. Almost would have cashed that sub prop. But between Else just going full turtle, I mean, he was done. I'm not hating on him. To the ref going, come on, like encouraging him. Like, I just knew him. Like, okay, that's going to kill our sub prop. Like, the ref wanted that TKO prop, and he got it. No, I don't mind that communication, the move fighter like Jason Herzog does, but, refs involving themselves in actions in many ways seems to be a theme. Dusko Tortovich defeats Dequan Townsend. And I'm not salty about that, by the way. It was just you could see it coming. Tortovich defeats Townsend. I have to feel for Townsend there. losing his brother and whatnot. But Todorovic, man, Teddy Todorovic there. He's got that speed, even though he doesn't necessarily have the size. Carlos Condit defeated Court McGee. He was happy to be wrong on that one. Yeah, man, that you always got to feel good whether you're on the right side or the wrong side. I always hate being on the wrong side of that one though, because I actually am a fan of Condit, and even though I was really happy for him, the victory lapping was like how could you have picked against Condit? Like, let's not pretend like, I think someone tweeted a stat like he's only won like 3 decisions out of like 40 something fights. Like, he's always had trouble with durable grinders, and McGee was, again, even despite the knockdown, arguably proving it more, was, even though in a loss, yes, he was a durable grinder. So for Condit to win a decision against that style type, even at this stage of this career, or you could argue especially at this stage of this career, not as likely as the after the factors would like you to think. But that being said, I'm a big fan of Condit. I'm a big fan of the old dudes, even though it was over another old dude, so I also felt bad. But I felt bad for McGee too, because not only that, but then everybody was posting McGee's nose, and like, instead of highlighting the fact that he's a tough bastard and he straightened his own nose, like the dude that did like non-narcotic surgeries, kind of makes sense that he would be sitting there straightening bones and cartilage in between rounds like it ain't no thing. Like, how about giving Court McGee some props, man? And then, of course, it shows them eating the next day, and everybody's like, yeah, McGee's cool again. And I'm like, you fuckers. Like, again, I'm all about, cheering on the favorites and this and that, but I just have that contrarian side where I'm like, hey, man, look for the underdogs too, the other guys that overcome adversity. That being said, happy Condit overcame adversity. And props to you who are on the right side who actually picked and bet Condit. I mean, that's really got to feel good when you bet the guy and then they cash like that. That's how I feel like when Jim Miller, hits, kind of a thing. So all good there. We'll see where they patch Condit up with. I really would. I appreciate the Hardy picks, like from colleagues of mine, like the Goes. By the way, check out the MMA Junkie Radio interview with James Krause. Fantastic. Of course, I went contrarian, and I'm like, let's see him run it with T Wood. But how can you say no to Condit and Matt the Immortal Brown, who seem to be agreed upon? So go ahead and run that, And then let's see, like, Diego Sanchez Cowboy. Let's see Nick Diaz, Robbie Lawler. Shoot, let's give Dan Hardy a Woodley. Fuck it. There's my old guy hanging around the high school too long. But turns out Carlos Condit wasn't trying to look cool. He is fucking cool, and he still looks good, man. I know he's not Carlos of old, but now I don't feel depressed about seeing him fight again. So that was awesome. Charles Jourdain defeated Josh Kulabau. Or no, split draw. Yeah, you could argue that Jourdain should have won, even though it was a super sketchy first round. But I don't hate it. I'm not mad about that kind of cutting down the return on the chalk. Nasruddin Imavov defeated Jordan Williams, unanimous decision. I barely remember this fight. I remember Jordan Williams getting messed up and keep coming forward. Is that right? Lomalokmomi defeated Jinyu Frey via unanimous decision. Got I sprinkled on her last minute. Casey Canny came through, defeated Hailey Alatang Hailey. A unanimous decision. 30-25 was the scorecard that I came up with too. Those kicks and damage was brutal. Luigi Vendramini defeated Yesene Yari via first round TKO. I already apologized in private, but apologize to my dude and anybody else I talked off Vendramini. In my defense, I don't know if I said it on the podcast, did it a specific person that asked. I said, if he goes to plus money, which he did, I don't mind a small sprinkle, but really wouldn't hate staying away. And of course, I ended up picking officially Yesene Yari. So apologies if I costed anybody potential money there for being wrong on that pick. All right, let's move on to UFC Fight in ESPN Plus 37, 1539, as bad as I thought I would do. All right. So we got Corey Sandhagen minus 140 versus Marlon Moraes plus 120 headlining. Yeah, it is kind of weird to see the line continue to go in Sandhagen's favor, despite that's where I ended up at. And despite my opinion being an awful lot like how the line moved, where I initially came in leaning toward Moraes, who was justly open as the favorite. Moraes is the deserved favorite for what that's worth. Again, back to my thing, like, it doesn't matter how I frame it, how fairly I frame it. Like I always do and do the work on and show, improve, and I don't get high in victory, and just as you don't get too low in defeat, but you get the pick wrong, and it's how was Martin Moraes the dog? Like, it's gonna be a total, after the fact thing, folks. I'm with you. Fucking the values on Moraes, just because I'm picking Sandhagen, the values on Moraes here. I initially came in leaning toward him. He's the deserved favorite, so to see him keep climbing, I mean, almost out of principle, makes you want to take a shot, right? However, I'm not. I haven't played this fight, to be completely honest. I feel like I'm going to be staying away. I'm not telling you to stay away. I may jump on something if I see an angle that I like, but really, for me, it's kind of the fairly straightforward angle or version of it. That seems to be the narrative out there, or at least, when I was talking to my co-host there, Dan Levy on the Line Movement MMA betting show. By the way, follow Line Movement MMA, Line Movement, I should say, on Twitter at line_movement, linemovement.com. The narrative, basically, Marlon Moraes within the first 2 rounds, at least for me. If not, I see the building nature of Corey Sandhagen picking up. I used to think Marlon Moraes was deceptively built okay to go 5 rounds. It's just because I followed him in the WSOF and would frequently go back to watch those fights. And I had to go back actually that far to watch his fights then for this fight because I wanted to see him against taller strikers. And I don't think the reach and the height is going to be a definitive factor here, folks. I know Miguel Torres was washed in only a 5'9" with not as maybe as long of a reach because Sandhagen's only at 70 inches. Not only that's a good reach for bantamweight, I'm just saying for 5'11", as long as he looks. He's got the Max Holloway thing, though. Literally plus an inch longer in reach than Max, who settles at 69 inches. But like I've explained so many people before, even before the first Jose Aldo fight, why the reach really doesn't matter. And apropos to that first Jose Aldo fight, that's what this fight smacks of. Jose Aldo's first meeting with Max Holloway. Marlon Moraes also seems to need his pockets to recoup and recover, being an explosive athlete there. Power striker. He can counter, come forward. His left hook's going to be to watch out for, as well as his leg kicks. Going to be interesting for Marlon Moraes. He's got underrated body kicks when he goes there. He just tends to headhunt. But Sandhagen, for as beautifully as he goes to the body and legs, he is also hittable to the body and legs because of his long frame and targets that he presents. And something that, I'm not a big stats guy, but yes, the numbers also back that up for what it's worth. So that's going to be what's worth looking for. It's going to be two-way street as far as that high output traffic. So don't expect Sandhagen to just come guns a-blazing, building high output off the bat. I expect him to be somewhat muted, and if Marlon Moraes can hit him hard enough, if not knock him out, then perhaps he can properly mute him for the duration of the fight, or however long it lasts. That being said, Marlon Moraes, even though he arguably does a bit better job at protecting his legs and body, still a little bit too comfortable with getting hit. That was the problem, along with, swinging too hard, but that was a lot of the problem in the turning of the tide of the Henry Cejudo fight. So you go into the Jose Aldo fight, and you're like, okay, let's see if he's going to improve pacing, which he did, and you could tell he was trying to an extent, although he still looked to fade a bit in the third round, which is worrisome to me. And coupling that with the previous factor of the previous loss, he was too comfortable getting hit with Jose Aldo. Now, especially for a guy like Jose Aldo who's coming down in weight as opposed to just facing a guy and getting burnt by a guy who came up in weight. And the good thing about facing a fellow power hitter like Jose Aldo is if you are going to make that gamble, you're going to know really quickly whether or not you could take that power for the most times. As far as not getting knocked out goes, sans examples like DC Stipe 2. However, you could argue that it's more dangerous to have that attitude, which, again, the reason why it was problematic, despite getting the win, technically against Jose, he made it closer than he needed to be, right? So there's a problem right there. It's also problematic if you carry that attitude and you don't fix it against a fighter who seemingly invites it, who seemingly seems like he's soft-handed at first because they've got the building that pop, 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 bam, pop, 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 bam, right? That is classic insert Rogan Diazism, right? Even though I wouldn't necessarily compare Sandhagen in the same way, but there's a similar theme there, okay? And that can be dangerous if you have that attitude where, absorbing strikes are going to be okay. I don't know about that. Which is why I do think the building nature and the later round susceptibility as the fight goes on is live for Sandhagen. So perhaps keep an eye on the live line for either hedging opportunities if you played Moraes or potential sharper opportunities depending on what kind of line/fight momentum you are reading. For that reason, I'm going to side with Sandhagen. I also think things like the uppercut, his sneaky uppercuts, straight shot counters, things that have been problematic for Moraes, I could see those having some hay, or, Sandhagen making hay with those. So I officially took Sandhagen by decision, but I am leaving the door open for a late stoppage a la Aldo Holloway 1. Let's see. Good luck if you played Moraes, folks. Edson Barbosa, minus 270, coming down a little bit. Makwan Amirkhani, plus 230. This and the next fight is going to be another one of those cases, whether you're looking at straight plays or parlay pieces, that where it's chalk that's playable. Again, there's no guarantees in life, folks. Especially in this game. So I'm not there. I would never mention the L word on this podcast, and I don't think that with either of the two matchups for what it's worth. I'm just saying, for example. But I will say that does apply to these two matchups, and something I've talked about before with like Bobby Green's of the world and so on and so forth. Even the Casey Kenny's, which you could argue, which was even higher price, that there is some chalk that is just, it should be higher. And I don't necessarily disagree with the ridiculously high chalk. Not disagree with it. I do disagree, right, at heart, right? But, like, I get and understand because we see it card after card, folks. Let's not, again, with the people getting pissed at the projected odds. It's like, I think next article I should do projected odds and my odds so people know that, like, I'm one of you. I get it. But let's not pretend that hyped fighters don't get bet up to minus 1,000 and are opened at stupid, minus 350 to minus 500s, okay? It happens almost every week. So for me to do a projected line, not my diehard agree with me or you suck line, is that what I wrote? No, projected line being actually much more generous technically version, more down to earth, more toward your version technically if we're going by the sports books. Even though I agree with you guys, I get just as upset with you guys that are vocal about, that were coming at me for that for the odds part, which actually wasn't very many people at all, for what it's worth. And the article did really well. Thank you for sharing it for what it's worth. But it's like let's not pretend, folks. The point of that mini rant is let's not pretend that we don't see stupid lines all the time. Now, coming from again this perspective of back to earth, being on more your guys' side of it, of course, right? Why am I going to bet these minus 400s or minus 500s? They've already been bet out of range. When there are more proven products, back to my original point in the matchup at hand, guys like Edson Barbosa at minus 270. And I know there's a big narrative, and I may have touched on it as far as Barbosa being done. And I know in the last 5 years, the only time I've officially picked Edson Barbosa was to beat Gil Melendez. And that's not because it was a fade on Barbosa. It's just Barbosa's style was kind of spoken for. And he's quietly improved it, and he's never gotten credit for certain things like his underrated wrestling or get-up ability from the butterfly guard or using the fence positions, which he's always had, and he's only improved further. And I got to imagine those skills even improved further after trading with Frank Yeager and now American top team back in Florida. And people forget, even in fights that he lost that were stylistic nightmares against bigger, more proven wrestlers and fighters than Amirkhani in the names of Kevin Lee or Khabib Nurmagomedov, Barbosa was doing what come the third round in those fights? Defending takedowns, hitting both, rocking one with spin kicks in the third round after defending shots, for nearly 15 minutes, folks. So this is not a guy who is easily worked over. And I have played and cashed on Barbosa even before that 5-year mark, with southpaws who put that pressure and can keep that pressure like a Michael Johnson for nearly 3-1 odds, right? Believe me, I cashed on Amir Khani when he made his debut on underdog odds against Andy Ogle, which was silly in the first place, but still, been a fan of Amir Khani since then. No hate on the guy. Point is, framing all this up is that, believe me when I say I really like Edson in this spot, man. I know I've talked bad about him going to 45, but if you rewind the tape on that, I think he'll do fine here. I think he'll make the weight here. It's more so, he's proven that part, okay? He put that part to rest. It's more when he decides to go back up, with all the miles and the age, especially by the time he decides to go back up. I think that's when we see the bottom drop out of Barbosa. So he's got to make the best of it while he's made this commitment to come down to featherweight. But I don't think guys with a suspect gas tank are going to be able to do that, and that is Amir Khani. And I know that's been levied against Ige, and I know many people didn't score that fight for Ige. I got no problem with that. But I will say is that Ige has a better cardio than people give him credit for, and I think he proved that even in defeat against Calvin Kattar going 5 rounds, and even prior to that because he would come back after gassing or losing the second, as well as Ige, of course, with the Hawaiian chin and Hawaiian heart. Not saying Amir Khani doesn't have heart, but we've seen the chin kind of suspectly tested, right? So you need a chin and you need a gas tank. Those are the two things you need more than wrestling, I would argue, when you're facing Edson Barbosa. You need a chin and you need a gas tank. I would easily argue that actually is more important than wrestling. I got Edson here. I think he's a great parlay piece. I played him inside the distance, or the new book I'm playing at right now. I could only do plus TKO, which I got better line instead because I think inside the distance is plus 115. Did a unit on plus 130. I had a little bit of my free play bonus to sprinkle on, so I just used it, that quarter unit, on round 3 plus 1,000. Decent odds, I guess, just because I could see it there. And then, I parlayed Edson with some people coming up that I wrote about in the linemovement.com article as well, if you want to read up on it there. Ben Rothwell, minus 155, going back up in the right direction. Tabora, plus 135, come back on him. This one scratches my head, man, for the same reasons. I know it's heavyweight MMA, but again, when you're having like debutantes and other heavyweights getting bet to 5-1, say what you will about Ben Rothwell. We know what we're going to get with Ben Rothwell. Ben Rothwell's slow. Like, this is heavyweight. Ben Rothwell's old. This is heavyweight. Ben Rothwell looks sloppy. This is heavyweight, folks. Like, come on. Dude, they let you run your bar tab when you fit that bill at heavyweight. You know what I'm saying? Like, the closing time, everyone but heavyweights because they have 9 lives, right? That's the song. Like, we know how it goes, folks. And Tabora is another guy that looks like he's been running the bar tab. You know what I'm saying? I know I need to, follow the shout outs to John Morgan. I know they follow the John Morgan rule. Careful, Dan. Don't say anything you wouldn't say to these. They seem like they have a good, sense of humor, and Tabora would probably just nod because he didn't understand me. And, it wouldn't be the first time Dan's had his pushed in by big dudes. Well, that sounded really bad. I meant it on the mat, folks. Easy. If any of you have the Dan Tom head, I know your head ran with that one. Anyway, I'm trying to be respectful as possible here, but when it comes, let me finish my beer belly analogy here. I'm gonna go with a guy who looks like he's been at that bar longer. He knows how to handle his alcohol better, and that is Ben Rothwell, folks. He's already came off the suspect layoff. He's already come off how many the PED things. Like, we've already seen him win, lose, come off these layoffs off it, with or without help. Hashtag Nick Diaz. Everyone's on steroids. I don't care about that. I don't think Tabora has the gas tank or the strength to employ the game plan that he wants to employ. He's going to push in the clinch. He's either going to get TKO'd or guillotined because Rothwell is the better striker. He is the more dangerous striker, still a potent one for a finish, I believe. More diverse, more awkward, better submission fighter. slow and weird as he looks, he is still durable and determined and will keep pushing for those 3 rounds. So I feel like Ben can win this fight any which 3 of ways he wants to. So at minus 150 where I got him, I played him straight. I think like 1.85 or 1.9. I put kind of a weird number close to the 2-unit range, at least for my liking. And then if you want to pair Big Ben and Edson for the neighborhood of plus 127 as I did a unit on that as well. And also put Ben in a triple threat that we have. If you want to put Big Ben with Edson plus 127. And then I have in a triple threat coming up with someone later on down the line. We got Durkus, Mark Duplass, just buying 3 things there for minus 170, and Marcus Perez plus 150. How about Marcus Perez? Remember after The Dark Knight came out, and for 2 or 3 years, there was always at least 3 guys that did the Joker, and they were so into being the Joker, and you're like, oh, look at me, I'm the Joker, everybody, look at my Joker costume, and they'd work on the mannerisms, which, something totally Dan Tom would do, so of course I was jealous of it secretly, right? But it was kind of annoying for us all. He's still going with that gag on every weigh-ins for whatever reason, even though there's a guy in his weight class who actually is higher ranked, more well-known, and has the nickname the Joker. It kind of looks like him. He looks more like the Joker without makeup, Not shitting on Jack Manson. Like my favorite, Willem Dafoe. I feel like Dafoe got casted for Green Goblin because they're like, we don't really need too much makeup if we go with Dafoe. Spider-Man. Love me some Willem Dafoe. What was that Jon Stewart gig where there's some pock face Eastern European politician that was involved in some election scam, and he was really sick, and they were making fun of his pock face complexion, which was really mean. And then Jon Stewart in the Daily Show, they had a scale he's graduated from the I don't know, it was Robert Davi to Willem Dafoe. He is now doing better. It was just a scale of guys with messed up faces. It was really messed up. Wow, Dan, way to sidetrack again. That's why you piss off these listeners, Dan. You know what? I make fans of other people. What the fuck was I? Yeah, about the matchup. Marcus Perez, basically the impersonation of the Joker. It doesn't stop at the weigh-ins, and in fights he'll do his fighting style is layers of impersonations. He's all right, it's time to do Anderson Silva up elbow, Tony Strickland vibes to try to scare them off. And then when they come in, I'm going to do a Lyoto Machida counter. Maybe then a Luke Rockhold check hook. And then it's all just impersonations of fighters. And when you can push through and read that, his game can fall apart, and you can kind of allow him to just dance himself into a decision loss. Duplessis, hard to tell from the EFC. It looks like he's really killing himself to get down to welterweight. So both these guys look like they're fighting in the right weight class. He comes from boxing and has judo credentials, but his wrestling actually doesn't seem too bad. He's got a little bit of wrestling actually too, but you don't know how good these credentials are. But the fact that he did them, you got to give him some credit for, right? Being from South Africa, Ernie Els there. I also suspected that Ernie Els was racist, Oh, I don't like the Tiger Woods coming on the scene. Dan, stop generalizing South African people. Anyways, wow, sidetrack. Yeah, I'm going to go with the South African guy on that note after I just, randomly disparage and generalize their golf legend. Yeah, I'll go Duplessis, who actually seems like he's got more process to his game. It's not on my avoid list. You can play it if you want. I didn't touch this fight. Tom Aspinall looks like Frank Mir and a PR man for Bellator, Danny Brenner. Shouts to Danny Brenner. Who actually looks like Danny Brenner straight up, if I'm going to be honest. Tom Aspinall does, who loves to box it out. I think he's got some boxing accolades there, but, he's got the British MMA regional titles and a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt to boot. If it goes there, he can handle himself quite well. He moves pretty light, stays light for a heavyweight. You can tell he trains with Darren Till because he's got that pull right-hand counter. Not a lot on Alan Badu other than getting flatlined in the aforementioned EFC by Dolce La Giambula. I don't like saying Dolce champion. Not that he can't be champion. It has nothing to do with his championship material. It's just like that. It's like the Joanna champion, right? But yeah, I'll go Aspinall here. I think he opened at like possible playable chalk in the 300 range. Did he? If he did, 350. Yeah, that was parlayable, or if you went big on him there. I mean, if you got the bankroll, I guess. But man, it's just bet out of range for a schlum schlep like me. That was probably a really bad word. I apologize. My Jewish brethren there. Yusuf Zalal, minus 160, plus 140. I was like, why is Yusuf Zalal plus 185 earlier this week? And I could see why. Even though I was leaning toward him on the Line Movement MMA betting show. If you remember my co-host Dan saying there, so take another look at Ilya Topuria. And I'm glad I did, because after I did my own study and research, yeah, man, the dude does look like he's been grappling and indoctrinated into grappling since the age of 4 from his fascia. Is now a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, moves very well. Really impressed with what I saw. Even doesn't seem to look bad on the feet. It's kind of a good boxing process, good stance. Parlays his level changes and come up high with kicks. Seen him get a straight-up knockout and stiffen a dude on the feet who was also tall and switched his stance. Has fought a lot of southpaws and switch stance guys. Doesn't seem to be out of sorts. Cardio seems to be there too, even though he hasn't seen round 3. Ultimately, we'll have to see. Ultimately, only time will tell. Both of his cardio and if his grappling truly is in game over territory. But I think he could be heading toward a game over territory top fighter, a specialist who can really put some strengths together. Perhaps like a young Charles Oliveira. He fits the age and bill. I believe he's only 23 without looking, and I know Zalal is only 24. I also love the attitude of Zalal. It comes from a great camp, super well-rounded. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt in his own right. But seeing guys like Jordan Griffin get on his back and just seeing that his style offensively or defensively, good or bad, involves him changing levels, involving in scramblings, that's not what you want to do with this guy. That's the mistake that almost everybody's made. So I'll be curious to see if Zalal looks to stick and move more. He'll have the cage size to do it. I just can't trust that Topuria doesn't get his fight. I love Zalal. I think he's got a great ceiling. I think he's in the right weight class. I just think that this is one of those early prospect style losses via submission, styles matchups that sneak up on you, however you want to frame it. I think this is it. So I played it while it was at plus 150. We'll see where it goes. I still think it's worthy of a look at plus 140. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I played it at Topuria plus 150, straight up 1.5. It was my only dog play, so I went a little heavier than most despite having decent odds on it already. Next fight, Tom Breeze minus 260 versus KB Bular plus 220. I really wanted to look at Bular for an upset pick, and that's not to fade Breeze for the typical reasons. But yeah, you can't. It's hard to trust Breeze though, right? Even though he's the official pick, he's a southpaw. He's a guy whose style I liked. I mean, this dude came out looking like the freaking Kurgan with the dark eyes and evil. And yeah, he's admittedly struggled with some anxiety, and that's not a knock on the guy as I sip my coffee. Dan Tong definitely has a dabbling of that and much more. He's very, I'm very susceptible, or not susceptible, yeah, that too. I'm very sympathetic toward, mental health, and I believe that the strongest dudes are the guys who can admit things and be vulnerable. That being said, we are talking about, putting biases aside, which is my job. My job is putting bias aside and breaking down fights, whether it's from a gambling perspective or not. I got to put that bias aside, but especially from a gambling perspective, as big gamblers listen to the show, and I respect that. I got to do my best to present those angles. That being said, Bular, besides some great interviews about Jurassic Park, and he seems like an endearing, likable guy himself, just like Breeze, didn't offer much as far as the film, so could not pick him or venture an underdog shot here. So the pick is definitely Breeze. It's a playable parlay piece if you trust him. It's just hard. I'm going to be optimistic about Breeze with the back to that first theory early in the pandemic era about other fighters who have admitted performance anxieties or anxieties in general. We've seen them pull things off and do well. So, they don't have the crowd. They don't have as much media, in-your-face media. So hopefully that plays in a guy like Breeze's favor, because when Breeze is on, he is such a fun fighter to watch. I love his jiu-jitsu as well. It's very underrated. So give me Breeze. I hope for Breeze to do well here. Rodrigo Nascimento minus 260. Come back on Chris Dukakis plus 220. Yeah, man. I was like, wait a minute. Why is Nascimento favored over a brown belt close to black belt level? And I'm like, oh, it's Chris, not Kyle. That being said, Chris, despite the, a lot of these guys at heavyweight, especially in this era, we're really bringing back the bar fighter bod. I don't even want to say dad bod, But don't judge Chris Dukakis. He can go up high with the kicks. We've seen him do it before, right? Really like those brothers. I don't know why. I just do. But I've seen them both through Contender Series, maybe. But I also saw Nascimento through Contender Series, who earned a decent grade, and I could see why he's favored. I don't think he should be that favored. Again, folks, anything north of minus 200, you need some proven skills. And Nascimento, for what it's worth, he does have some skills in a process, albeit just a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt. He's got some decent skills to get it to the floor. He's not exactly changing levels and doing athletic shots, but he knows how to use the cage and the bounces off it and, sweeps and basic stuff such as that. And he's got some good passing and good wherewithal. He's not rushing. He plays his position smartly. He can strike, against southpaws or orthodoxes and seem not too out of sorts. So I'm going to pick him here, but I'd be careful about playing that chalk. I'd also be careful about playing the dog odds. I feel like this gets sloppy. So if you're going to give me plus money on a 1.5, I've not listened to our friends over at The Analysis, but I'm sure this is probably their special as well. I don't want to steal the Dukakis name. It just, again, the 90s, early 90s, late 80s references there are going to play. But, I went Dukakis Nascimento over 1.5 plus 115. Quarter unit on that. Let's just see where it goes. All right, next fight. Impa Pimpa Kasanganai minus 240. Joaquin Buckley plus 200. Initially I'm like, is this too wide of a spread? But I'm like, no, man. I'm impressed with Impa as well. He, is a prospect one of the more smarter prospects in some time. Puts together the quiet things you don't get credit for, like body work and level changing takedowns, composure, high percentage play, positional play. Impa shows these signs and nothing but growing. Even training with guys like Chris Weidman now, who has now moved to the South, so he's joined that kind of training crew down south there, already training with some southpaws, which will come in handy against Joaquin Buckley. He's had Brian Barberina in tow recently, and of course the Salter Dog, down Salter. So he's got the southpaw looks. So I like Impa Kasanganay here. Joaquin Buckley doesn't come from wrestling, jiu-jitsu ranks, doesn't come from boxing. Just a athletic kid who wanted to stay competitive from his profile appears and just jumped into it right off of 18, and he definitely is, a fun action fighter, and I think he can develop into one. And if he can get the upset here, good on him. But I think minus 240, especially in comparison to what some other prices are for what you're risking, I think that's playable chalk, which is why I made my playable chalk. So if you wanted to do a more of a chalkerson with Impa and Edson at minus 120 for 1.75 units and follow me off that cliff, you can. Or to round out the 2-2-manners and just combine all three of the usual suspects in the equation of chalk, playable chalk, Impa, Kasanganay, Edson Barbosa, and a Big Ben for the neighborhood of like plus 220-ish or something like that. I threw a little bit on that myself, so I kind of did a layering parlay. You don't have to follow me off that cliff, just being honest in what I played there for that. Okay, next fight. Tony Kelly, money coming in, minus 225. Ali Al-Casey, plus 185. Ali Al-Casey footage in one eye, out the other, and then same thing again after I watched the fight live, and then I went back here and just not impressed, man. I don't get it. There's not a lot there to like, not a lot of activity. I want the guy to do well. Seems like a nice enough guy, and But I was more impressed even in defeat. And, sure, you could argue that he won that fight. But regardless, the scorecard, not trying to argue that. I was more impressed with that showing of Tony Kelly, especially some of the things in the clinch and some of his auto-tune stuff there. So if he can avoid falling into Casey's strong points, I think his activity and grit can carry through. Perhaps I'm not alone there, which is why money's coming in on him. So perhaps he's a number to play with, but at this point, probably a parlay piece or stay away unless you really like Casey there. Next fight, Omar Morales, minus 160, Chikadze, plus 140. Can Jigga land a Jigga kick? We shall see. What weight is this fight? 155, right? Because Omar's coming down to 145. That is kind of questionable. You're like, it's his first fight there. Pandemic era. The guy doesn't look like he had too much to lose. He's pretty thick, but kind of like Edson, we said the same thing. And I think both those guys are not exactly a similar build or anything, but they come from that similar Thai boxing background. Damn you, Ryan Wegner, the 8 Limbs podcast. Thai boxing. Come see the ties. Damn it. And they probably play that song, just do extra works on the bag, run some extra laps, things you can do during this pandemic era, cut them calories. I think they'll show up fine. Rooting for, shout out to John Rico. I know he's rooting for his boy Jigga, and that's why I came in leaning toward. But this is going to be a stay away. I didn't do full tape study, but after rewatching, refreshing myself on Omar's last fight, and that was one of the. It's so weird seeing your tweets on the broadcast, especially when you go back to watch fights. You're like, get that ish out of here. Is that idiot talking? I picked that fight wrong because I liked my southpaw Gabriel Benitez. But Omar, man, he's got, and especially in that fight, right? Drops the first round, comes back. He really has those Brad Riddell vibes, like I said earlier this week on Wednesday. He's got those Brad Riddell high. Shout out to the Verbal Tap podcast for that reference. And he's just really well-rounded, training Sanford MMA. You got to like that. It's got that South American grit, man. Toughness, chin. Unless Jigga can get him with like a Jigga kick or surprise him with some type of submission or something after, it's like a Halaba, Burgos where he does the knockdown and then gets immediately caught or something like. I feel like Morales can grit out another decision here, Brad Riddell style. So he's going to be the pick, which is why I don't necessarily hate the line, but this is going to be on the void list because I am not going to tell you where to put your money on this fight. All right, next one. It's on the avoid list. I didn't do any tape study for this. Apologies, ladies. Tracy Cortez minus 185. Stephanie Edger making her debut, I believe, plus 160. Cortez opened big at minus 305. So money coming in on Edger. Interesting to see. Good luck if you played that. I'll pick Cortez, but it's going to be on my avoid list for the aforementioned reason. Doesn't mean you have to avoid it. I just did for obvious reasons. Tajir Ulanbekov, minus 460. Bruno Silva, plus 365. This was kind of a crazy wide line, but I didn't get a chance to look into it. And because it both opened and stayed wide at minus 455 to now minus 460 in the neighborhood of, it kind of took away my interest. It made me go, ooh, my highs aren't back, folks. I'm sorry. End of the week. As I try to do a poor deflation, 7th grade humor joke. So yeah, I'll take Tajir, but take that for what you will. That's a blind pick right there, folks. All right. So how do we do on time? Not too bad, 49. All right. Recapping here, taking Corey Sandhagen over Marlon Moraes, taking Edson Barbosa over Makwan Amirkhani, taking Big Ben Rothwell over Mason Tibura, taking Durkas Mark Duplass over Marcus Perez, taking Tom Aspinall, a.k.a. Danny Brenner, over Alan Badu, taking Ilya Topuria over Yusuf Zalal, taking Tom Breeze, Kurgan, over KB Buller, taking Rodrigo Nascimento over Chris Dawkins Dukakis, taking Impa Pimpa Kasanganai over Joaquin Buckley, taking Tony Kelly over Ali Al-Casey, taking Omar Morales over Chikadze, taking Tracy Cortez over Steffi Edger. Taking Tajir Ulanbekov over Bruno Silva. Parlay pieces. I think Edson Barbosa and Bakasangane make good parlay pieces. You parlay them together for minus 120 as I did. If you want to follow me off that cliff, also took Edson and Big Ben together at a plus 127 neighborhood. And also, if you really want to follow me off a cliff, if you're feeling lucky, just parlay all three of those guys, Impa, Edson, and Big Ben, plus 220 neighborhood. Also, straight play Big Ben. Took him straight up when he was at minus 150 for 1.75 units. Also took Tapuria when he was at plus 150 at 1.5 units. For props, I took Edson by TKO plus 131 unit. Edson round 3, little sprinkle plus 1,000 quarter unit. Little sprinkle on Dukakis Nascimento over 1.5 plus 115 for a quarter unit. Avoid list, Silva Ulanbekov, Edger Cortez, and Chikadze Morales, mainly because of my lack of tape study. Thank you guys. Give this a like if this is on YouTube. Subscribe to my channel on YouTube. Help me out there. Daniel, Tom, MMA. Positive reviews and leaving the reviews and the 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts is a big help. I keep getting asked about SoundCloud and Spotify. I'm going to get on there, folks, I promise. It's probably going to have to wait till I finally take my first vacation, which I don't know how much of a vacation it'll be due to burying my grandfather and possible dog surgeries. But yeah, I'm going to look to do it then. I apologize. Thank you for staying with me. You can also check out these smartphone-friendly players on mixedmartialanalyst.com while you're there if you want to support this podcast. You can also click the PayPal donation link. From $1 to anything helps. Thank you there. Or if you don't want to spend any money at all, but you want to support it for doing your own shopping, then go ahead and click on the On It banner for all your health stuff needs. I enjoy the hemp protein personally, or the Amazon banner. I know we don't like to admit it. We probably use Amazon more than we should, but I know you all use it. You go to mixedmartialanalyst.com, click on the banner on the side. Just a couple extra clicks, you go through your shopping at no extra cost to you. A small percentage of whatever you buy will get kicked back to this podcast, which I assure you it is used. So thank you there. Good luck on your picks and plays this weekend. And always protect your neck.